Subscribe.
I don't normally have anything remarkable to say about Kirby games, but Kirby's Epic Yarn is different. This game just oozes charm. I really like the aesthetic. And I also like how they use the new style to create some interesting gameplay mechanics. It's not just that things look like yarn, everything is made of yarn or some kind of craft. Yarn is pliable, you can stretch, tie, shape it, layer it with other things. Kirby's Epic Yarn does all of that, and I think it's so cool. Everything in this game ties around this softer theme. The plot is presented like a bedtime story. Levels are usually leisurely in pace. The music is soft and lighthearted. While different from other Kirby games, it still remains pretty simple mechanically, and that really lends itself to accessibility. I can recommend any Kirby game to play with your family, or anyone who doesn't play a lot of games, and Epic Yarn is included in that. I'm not sure the hardcore audience would be satisfied, however. There isn't a lot of depth here, and I think that can be a letdown sometimes, especially if you're trying to binge this game. It helps that it isn't very long, but still. Also, something weird that happened while I was playing, I felt like my eyes needed a rest at points. Like the imagery was so soft and light that afterwards I needed to play something more crisp and dark. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. Kirby's Epic Yarn isn't very deep or long, but there's so much to enjoy that I don't really care. The aesthetic here is so enjoyable, and I commend the developers for tying it into the gameplay. When all of these elements come together, it just feels like a nice hug of a game. The most cozy game you can play, and that's something worth noting.
Eight out of 10!
In contrast to Epic Yarn, the last Kirby game I played, Return to Dreamland feels incredibly vanilla. I'm not a hardcore Kirby fan, but if I were to guess what was going on, I'd say that the fans were itching for a return to form after the last game. But I don't know, this feels pretty meh to me. Like baby's first platformer, and I know that's the point of Kirby, but you could at least do something more interesting with it. Kirby's Return to Dreamland is still a fine game. Like every other Kirby game I've played, this is a good one to play with friends or family. It's a little easier on people who aren't that great at platformers, and gives them a connecting point to enjoy. But that's kind of my problem with it too. There isn't a lot going on here. So while it's fun watching my little brother try to keep up, I'm pretty bored on my side. The copy abilities will always be fun, but I'm the type of player who gets the ability they want and holds on as long as they can, because some other ones just kinda suck. I never liked abilities where you had to stop moving to use it. It makes a slow game feel even slower. I do like the new super abilities, or whatever they're called. Basically souped up versions of regular abilities, they bring some nice flair. Other than that, I'm barely hanging on. I could not care less about the story. I know Kirby has some crazy lore, but when you're playing with other people, it's hard to listen to cutscenes or pause the game for little lore drops. So we're left with the gameplay, and I think the gameplay is just fine. But look, all I'm trying to say is that Kirby's Return to Dreamland feels like another baseline Kirby game. And Kirby games are good, but I don't find them very interesting. I enjoyed it, but I'm not raving about it like it did anything unique. It's just a decent game.
7 out of 10!
When I originally played this game to score it, I thought it was fine. There was some cool stuff, but nothing to really hold on to for long periods of time. Coming back now to write this review, I realized I was doing something wrong. I forgot how much fun this game is with friends. Mario and Sonic at the London 2012 Olympic Games, remember that because I'm not saying the whole thing again, is a ton of fun with a group of people. What I like is that you can jump into pretty much any game and get the controls and rules pretty easily, and the games themselves are on average pretty enjoyable. There's a pretty wide selection of sports to choose from. Running, swimming, gymnastics, table tennis, there's a good chance there's something in there everyone will enjoy. And when you want to spice things up, the dream events are great since they aren't really limited to fully emulating the Olympic events. I also have to mention that seeing the cast of Mario and Sonic come together for one game is just cool. It's also nice to see how they bring in their series aesthetics into the sports, and listen to the music from both franchises as well. Now, Mario and Sonic really hinges on this multiplayer aspect. I don't find it nearly as fun doing the single player content. It's then that you really start to see how simple, gimmicky, or even broken some of these games are. In multiplayer, it's fine. It creates a separation from the game so things don't get too competitive, but when going for missions or records, it can be rough. I also think that this game can wear out its welcome pretty quick. When you're waggling Wii remotes over and over, it can get tiring. And that also starts to tear down the fun party veil this game tries to keep up. So don't play this game for too long, but if you want a little blast of fun and energy, I think this can be a good pick.
7 out of 10!
Mario Kart Wii is the most fun bullshit game I've ever played, and I think that's why there's a lot of split opinions on this game. It all depends on how you approach it, and what you want from it in the end. I definitely lean on the good game side of this argument. I know Mario Kart Wii has wild design decisions in it, but I end up liking it more than not. The main point I see detractors bring up is the items. They're all over the place. Yeah, that's true, but that's also kind of the point. Yes, it sucks to get carted in this game, trust me, I've been there, but I can't help but laugh. And when you get back on your feet, that's incentive to work your way back up and give your opponent a taste of their own medicine. Listen, I understand the want for a more balanced experience, but Mario Kart Wii is also just a lot of fun to drive through. The controls are super smooth, and new tracks remain some of my favorites in the whole series. It's a blast to weave around corners, trick off ramps, and exploit shortcuts, but when you're playing with a group of people, I wouldn't really have it any other way. Mario Kart items are the great equalizer. It gives hope to people who are in the back and strikes fear into those tryhards gunning for first place. I find that feeling exciting. It pushes me to drive faster, be more careful with my items, and learn the courses. And like I said before, the courses in here are great. Coconut Mall, DK Summit, Rainbow Road. I could play these for hours and hours more. This was the last game before they added major gameplay changes like gliders, customizable carts, and anti-gravity. The designers had bikes and the new trick system to work with, but mostly they had to just push the course design beyond previous levels, and I think they largely succeeded. Some of the retro courses aren't great though. It's cool that we have so many courses to race on, but a lot of these retro ones feel flat and uninteresting. I rarely go back to them. The other detractor for me is the visuals. Some models don't look great, and the picture looks incredibly washed out compared to other games. Still, I have so much fun racing I don't really care. I love Mario Kart Wii. Whenever my friends and I start it up, we can always expect a wildly fun experience, with good tracks, good game feel, and those bullshit items. An X factor that can make careers and ruin friendships. And isn't that what Mario Kart is about?
9 out of 10!
This was one of the first games I got for the Wii, and it was my absolute favorite for a while. I was so enthralled by the various courts and the special moves and cool animations. This was about when I was really into animation. At some point though, I traded it in. Years later, I couldn't remember why. I loved that game. Why did I do that? After repurchasing it, I remembered, oh yeah, this game kinda sucks. I loved the visuals, the music, the cool intro sequence, trying the different characters, but man, actually playing this thing was not fun. I'll never forget after buying this game again, bringing it out at a get-together, hoping it would be all I remembered, and then just shaking the Wii remote every now and then and watching the game basically play itself. It was so boring. It was like a worse version of Wii Sports Tennis. It didn't feel responsive at all, and everything moved so slow. I could hit the ball and then take a full sip of my drink before I had to swing again. That's not very engaging. I think when I was younger, I just wanted to see my favorite characters on screen doing cool stuff, and back then I got what I wanted. But now I see a boring tennis game with forced motion controls. I think from now on, I'll just let the memories suffice.
3 out of 10!
Never before or since have I seen a Mario game with such style, such grit. Mario Strikers Charged is a fun enough play on that alone. I love seeing the characters show some actual personality. Everyone here's got some attitude and it's awesome. It's pretty openly violent too. People getting buried in the mud, burned alive, and shoulder checked into electric fences. Again, it's just cool to see this side of Mario. It's dirty, it's edgy, and it's rough, and it shows everywhere. From the animation, the art style, the gameplay, and the soundtrack. Man, the soundtrack is so good. Everyone has their own theme in this game, and there's some top-notch stuff in here at a wide range. You've got rock, hip-hop, country, Latin, pop, it's all here. Now let's talk about the actual game. I like the souped-up wacky soccer gameplay. It's something I'd expect from a Mario sports game, and it delivers. I didn't end up using the items very much, but I love trying out all the different fields. A lot of creative ideas when it comes to field design. I also really like the character roster. They didn't get everyone, but I think they covered a good range of characters and enemies from the series up to that point. And again, it's cool to see their personalities come out. I gotta be honest though, I don't really like playing matches as much as I used to. It's fine, but managing a whole team of characters causes problems. When passing, the game just kind of chooses who to pass the ball to, and same goes when switching who you're in control of. I know you can influence this with the direction you're holding or something like that, but it's hard to do that when you're maneuvering your character at the same time. And when in single player, computers don't have to deal with this. Nowadays, I'd rather watch someone else play, and I could admire the visuals and music. Mario Strikers Charged is still a cool game, just not as fun as I thought it once was.
7 out of 10!
Mario Super Sluggers surprisingly still holds up today. My friends and I play it occasionally and pretty much always have a good time. Mario sports games usually deliver a nice twist onto whatever the subject sport is, and I think baseball really benefits from it. Baseball can be a pretty slow sport, but gimmicks in here like the buddy toss, close plays, and items keep everyone engaged the whole way through. One of my favorite aspects of Mario Super Sluggers is you have a good amount of control over how you want to play, and I'm not just talking about the game rules. By playing with a Wiimote and nunchuck, you get the full Mario baseball experience. Fine control of pitches, positioning, base running, etc. But if you don't feel like playing with all those factors, you can just choose the Wiimote on its own, and pretty much waggle your way through the game. It's a nice, subtle option select accommodating of different players. You wouldn't have guessed it just by looking at it, but Mario Super Sluggers also has its own single-player campaign, which I found a ton of fun when I was younger. It's cool to run around the stadiums talking to the characters and solving puzzles. It's not a groundbreaking RPG or anything, but it's nice to have. My problems kind of vary day to day with this game. What I mean by that is you have to be in a certain mood to play Super Sluggers. Some games can go on pretty long, things can get frustrating and start to snowball out of control. Some maps can get on my nerves too, but not very often. The two problems that seem to stick are the performance and the balance. The game looks fine, but it can chug at certain points, and it gets pretty bad. As far as balance, I find that Bowser's team just kind of blows everyone out of the water, and other teams are really weak like Yoshi or Wario. So beware, but if you're craving some Mario sports action, I can definitely recommend Mario Super Sluggers.
7 out of 10!
I really like what Nintendo and Retro Studios have made here with Metroid Prime, but I'm finding it hard to articulate why. Metroid to me is all about uncovering the story through player agency and mechanics. Metroid Prime epitomizes that for me. There are tons of lore bits you can read, but you can also learn a lot just by playing through the game. Talon 4 is great for this. With the exception of a few hiccups, the progression is pretty seamless. It feels like Samus evolves as a character when she gets more powerful and when you get more familiar with the world, going from a vulnerable bounty hunter to a full-on Terminator. This general philosophy is the draw to pretty much all Metroid games. So why do I like Prime in particular so much? Well, I think being in 3D naturally elevates this, but in particular that first-person camera. People like to throw around the term immersive so much that I think it's lost most of its meaning, but I think it's apt here. All the little details that come with this new perspective really allow me to connect with Samus more than any other Metroid game. Even when the camera pulls back occasionally, I still feel like I'm watching a part of myself. It's interesting. The controls are important too, and I should mention I'm playing the Wii version. At first, I really hated the Wii controls. They were very unorthodox, and the first boss has you waving around frantically trying to lock onto tiny enemies. But after that boss, I came around on the motion controls pretty quickly. I thought they were a little clunky when pointing at the edges of the screen, but for the most part, they were precise and responsive. Metroid Prime is the Metroid experience for me. I only wish there was an option for more accessible controls. If that were the case, it would be able to bridge the hardcore/casual gap that Metroid has struggled with for so long. As it stands, it's still a massively well-made game.
9 out of 10!
Metroid Prime 2 has all the DNA of the other Prime games, so naturally I like it. However, when it comes to the design of the planet Aether, I hit a few snags that unfortunately brought me out of the experience. Let's start with Dark Aether. I'm not sure if there was a way to save Dark Aether for me. The idea might have worked, but it felt kind of pointless in the end. There weren't that many puzzles that involved both worlds, and progression was just switching to one world until I got stuck and then switching back. Dark Aether also just felt like a slightly harder version of Light Aether. To be honest, neither felt as fun to explore either, and I mean visually this time. The areas were technically varied in terms of setting, but they all had this muddy look to them. The sanctuary is a little cooler, but I found it to be such a pain to explore that I no longer cared. At least the bosses were a little better this time. They were pretty well designed. As I mentioned in previous Metroid reviews, it can be easy and even optimal to go in with lots of energy tanks and just take damage until you eventually win. These bosses don't really let you do that. I had to pay better attention to patterns and break them apart like their own puzzle. The only exception to that was the final boss. You have to switch beams to do damage, but other than that, it's just dodge and shoot. Back to some other snags real quick. There were two moments I remember where you had to backtrack really far in order to get an upgrade, which flew into the face of Prime 2's more linear design. The endgame key hunt also flies in the face of this. I didn't really mind it last game because you can get some of the keys midway through, but here it's just a frustrating wild goose chase for these keys, especially with switching between the light and dark worlds to find them. All in all, Prime 2 is still a Prime game, and it's got all the things I like about those games, but I feel this one tripped over itself a few times along the design process.
7 out of 10!
This may be controversial, but if you've seen my other Prime reviews, you may be able to gather why I like Metroid Prime 3 so much. I don't mind the inclusion of other characters and voice acting. In fact, I welcome it. It fills out the universe just a little more. I like being able to actually see the Galactic Federation do some stuff, and the same goes with the other bounty hunters. The Federation in particular was always this presence in the series, but previously they felt like an excuse to give Samus a mission rather than an actual space force. Now, do I think these new characters are any interesting? Since I'm asking that question in the first place, you can probably tell what my answer is, but I still like that they're there. I also don't really mind the motion controls in Prime 3. Yeah, they're kinda gimmicky, but I don't really find them that intrusive. The grapple beam got to be a little much, but I like what they added as far as immersion more than what they took away. I thought the use of multiple worlds was also pretty cool. Instead of one world with its own backstory to unravel, we got multiple. My favorite area had to be the GFS Olympus. It was an amazingly dark section that Metroid lore kind of implies, but you never really get to see in this much detail. The main area I felt let down on was the implementation of Samus's gunship. There were a couple cool puzzles, but dealing with the gunship felt more cumbersome than it was fun. I saw videos of the devs saying they wanted the ship to be an extension of Samus's abilities, but I don't think they went far enough. You get a couple scripted segments and an optional puzzle or two. Other than that, it's just parked somewhere waiting for you to hop on and go to the next planet. What Prime 3 brought to the table was pretty much what I wanted. I think that's why I liked it so much. I can see why people don't like it as much as the others, as it does break away from Metroid convention in a lot of ways, but I think most of it worked out. If you're a more hardcore fan though, I'd approach with a slightly different mindset than most other Metroid games.
8 out of 10!
I feel like critically looking at the new Super Mario Bros. Games is really tricky. On the whole, they're all pretty similar, and as such, they end up being similar in quality. What I do think is interesting is that the group of people I play with all vastly prefer New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Is it because Wii is the superior game? I don't know. But what I do know is that we would have all grown up playing the Wii game more than any of the others. See, the Wii is intrinsically tied to that part of my childhood, where me and my friends would play games together. It was one of the first games me and my friends beat together at the time, and it was my greatest achievement. The final boss forced us to work together, something us kids weren't very used to. See, it's unmistakable New Super Mario Bros. Wii gets favor from me because of nostalgia, as it does for many people. The problem with these New Super Mario Bros. Games is that, in reality, they aren't that special. 2D platformers were a fad that had come and gone when these games were making the rounds, but the Wii version was the height of Mario's 2D return, and yet, it's just another 2D Mario. The reason Wii gets favor from so many people is because the new Super Mario Bros. Games feel like they were designed for this new fad, the return of the 2D platformer, but this time they added multiplayer. And when you're playing a game like that on Nintendo's best-selling home console, and playing one of the best-selling games on that console, it's no wonder to me that New Super Mario Bros. Wii got such high ratings. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Maybe as we eventually return to the other games in the series, the picture I'm trying to paint will become more clear. As for now, yeah, of course I love this game. It was right place, right time for Mario on the Wii, and I still think it's a good game regardless of my memories with it, even if nowadays it's nothing that special.
Seven out of 10!
Rayman Origins kind of confused me while I was playing it. I could tell I was playing a good game, but all I could feel, even now, was just going through the motions. I loved the cartoony visuals, but it was just another world after world like it was my day job. The levels were well designed, but it was just another 2D platformer. This was one of the games I played explicitly for this list. I probably wouldn't have touched it otherwise. It looked interesting enough for me to buy it, but afterwards I never thought to pull it off the shelf. That is, until I felt I had to. Maybe it was that circumstance that soured my experience, or maybe it really was the game itself. Rayman Origins didn't really feel that special, to be fair. While I thought the levels were fine, the way the game progressed was incredibly repetitive. No amount of scenery change could hide the fact that I was doing the same stuff every world. You start by playing the first few levels, then you reach a checkpoint where you have to reach a quota of MacGuffins to progress, you rescue some character, fight a boss, and then do the same thing in the next world. And like I said, I thought the levels were fine, but I just felt beaten over the head with a lot of the same mechanics. I had to play this one sparingly in order to not burn myself out. And it sucks because, on the other hand, Rayman Origins is an incredible game. It's one of the most creative games I've played in terms of its aesthetics. The music is so fun and unique. Not a lot of big games outside of Nintendo would really go for that style. In fact, it feels pretty at home here on the Wii. I really wanted to like Rayman Origins. I didn't hate it. I know there's some good stuff in there, but while I was playing, I just felt bogged down. Maybe I just wasn't seeing it back then.
6 out of 10!
Sonic Colors is a blast. I don't care what any of you overcritical Sonic fans have to say. This game is great, and I won't have any more of this slander. Anyway, now that that's out of my system, yeah, I like Sonic Colors. In all honesty, I can see why some people don't like this game. It was a pretty big shift in direction for the franchise, which had larger implications that I'll get into later on. But I still think that on its own, Colors is a solid title. The game takes pretty big steps to be more accessible to new players, but still manages to hold its identity as a trademark Sonic title. Instead of trying to cram a ton of gameplay styles into a single package, Sonic Colors narrows its focus down to just Sonic, and pays close attention to how the design can appeal to all types of fans. It's a little slower, more platform heavy than other Boost games, but it doesn't totally cut the high-speed action. A new player can pretty comfortably boost their way through the story, but a more dedicated player will have to keep an eye out for red rings, or other routes that can lower their time. This is the reason I think Colors is so great all around. It's an incredibly balanced gameplay experience. It works well for both new players and returning veterans, at least in my eyes. But Sonic Colors ain't perfect. Upon replaying for the first time in a while, I can confirm the story kinda sucks. I think they went a little too far on that goofy Saturday morning cartoon feeling. It clashes too hard with the game's ending, which tries to be more serious and dramatic, and I feel it doesn't work overall. There are some good moments in there, I will admit, but personally, I'm left cringing or shaking my head more than I am laughing. This probably won't be the last time I say this, but I feel like the tone of Sonic Unleashed was the sweet spot. But this is a game at the end of the day, and on that side of things, I think Sonic Colors pretty much nails it. I enjoy it as a Sonic veteran. My lucky friends who don't play Sonic like this game, I feel there's nothing to lose in at least trying out Sonic Colors.
9 out of 10!
So, interesting case this one. Sonic Riders Zero Gravity is objectively not a very good game, but I can't help but like it. In case you haven't heard me say it before, I'll make it clear once again. I love the Riders series. Jet the Hawk, top 5 Sonic characters. Racing on hoverboards, super cool. But Zero Gravity itself feels kinda weak, mechanically speaking. The previous game felt pretty deep, but confused everyone by not explaining itself. Zero Gravity feels like an overcorrection in this sense. This is a really simple racing game, almost to a fault. There's no drifting, there are technically items, but they don't really do anything. Controls are incredibly stiff. Even the gravity mechanic, the game's namesake, isn't really that interesting. It looks cool to slow down everything around you, start floating and charge up like some kind of DBZ character, and then rocket off in a new direction. It looks cool, feels cool sometimes, but one version of this move is really just a slower drift function, and the other is an excuse for a boring track design. Really, every area meant for the drift is a random sharp corner, and those meant for the dive are 9 times out of 10 empty corridors with nothing in them. It's not like you have to manage your use of these abilities either. The meter as well as your pickups are super generous. If it had a little more time in the oven, maybe the gravity mechanic would have been sick, but it's really not here. So then why do I still like this game somewhat? Well, if not for its simple gameplay, the tracks here are pretty cool. Some of them take pages right out of the previous game, but I like the locales. This may sound petty, but I also just like racing as some of my favorite video game characters. This game takes such a unique approach to the racing genre that it feels almost uniquely Sonic. The other thing is, and I know this may sound weird, but I like the story mode. It's not groundbreaking or anything, but they're cheesy, dramatic, fun, and over in a couple hours. Sonic Riders Zero Gravity is a pretty mediocre racing game, but it is unique. It's got something to say to the other arcade racers out there, that it's not all about karts and blue shells, and I can at the very least respect it for that. Also, the soundtrack is pretty good.
6 out of 10!
I want to take a step back for this one. Mario Galaxy was my #1 childhood game. It is the most influential piece of media in my life, and I just want to appreciate that for a moment. Galaxy was one of the first video games I ever played. I clearly remember being in awe. Even out of the game, I was drawing pictures in class, literally looking up in the sky, imagining Mario jumping between planetoids, collecting stars. I made my own goddamn Mario Galaxy comic. There are images of this game that will forever be etched into my brain. brain. First, waking up on that little planet in the middle of space. The camera zooms out and plays that somber but curious jingle. Putting my first grand star into the observatory and watching the area start to liven. Rescuing Luigi from the booze. That big lava planet in freeze flame. Oh, the music and buoy bass. The random mini version of the tutorial planet in Deep Dark. Of course, the final encounter with Bowser, when after a whole game of wahoos and yippies, Rosalina looks dead at the camera and says, "Go, Mario." Holy shit! This is more than just a game to me. When I was a kid, I lived it. Now, it's a relic. A testament to how media can shape people's lives. It's a large part of why I'm here, because I want other games to live up to this. Everyone deserves an experience like I had with Mario Galaxy. I think we genuinely need more games like that out there. There are other 10s on this list, but this one is different. You know what? Fuck it. It's my show. Super Mario Galaxy gets an 11 out of 10. I shouldn't have to explain myself. Just go play the fucking game already. Alright, so the original Super Mario Galaxy set a really high bar coming into the sequel. In hindsight, it was impossible for Galaxy 2 to live up to. I still absolutely loved my time with Galaxy 2. It's an amazing game and everyone should try it. But something was missing. Galaxy 2 was, well, it was a video game. In the Galaxy 1 review, I described how that game went beyond the bounds of the screen. In my child mind, it felt like somewhere out there in the vast reaches of space, there could be a Mario jumping on asteroids, but 2 couldn't match that. It starts as early as the first gameplay sequence. Why are they retelling the story? Let's be honest, while I loved the storytelling in the first game, it's not like it was this untouchable piece of gameplay and writing that one shouldn't even try to follow up on. While the details are in the world building, the broad strokes are Bowser kidnaps Peach. Was it really imperative to retell that story? The next thing that closed those borders for me was the world map. The first Galaxy had a hub where everything felt naturally connected. Now we're just going down a line. And don't get me wrong, I like the Starship Mario. It was fun to watch it go from an empty husk to a bustling space station, but I wasn't traveling to distant planets anymore, I was picking levels out of a world map. Let me stop for a second. I want to make absolutely clear that I still love Galaxy 2. I'm not so blinded by nostalgia that I can't see an incredibly fun and well-designed video game. You could argue a lot of the levels are better than the original game. They have better flow, they don't reuse the same ideas as often. Yoshi is a great addition. It's one of the only things that feels missing from the first game. Things are a lot more bright and colorful, and there are a lot more orchestrated tracks in the soundtrack. But at the end of the day, when I play Mario Galaxy 2, I'm playing a video game. I'm not exploring the galaxy, I'm playing levels. I'm not restoring the observatory, I'm unlocking another world. You see what I mean? That's why Galaxy 2 will never live up to me. Super Mario Galaxy 2 is still a fantastic game. If you haven't played it yet, you're missing out on one of the best platformers of all time, to be quite frank. Galaxy 1 will always be my choice, but I don't ever count out Galaxy 2.
9 out of 10!
Was there another game as defining of a generation as Wii Sports? I don't think I've ever found a person my age who isn't down to play some tennis, bowling, or boxing. This game was riding that Wii craze all the way through its lifespan. This thing was so popular that now in 2022, we got a new sports game because people would not shut up about Wii Sports. When I put pen to paper, I find it hard to write about Wii Sports purely as a game. There really isn't that much going on. It's just 5 sports. Baseball, bowling, boxing, golf, and tennis. You use the Wii's motion controls to emulate each respective sport. There's a training mode, which is fun too, but what am I really supposed to talk about? See, the real magic of Wii Sports is in its simplicity. It's a game that everyone can understand. Anyone of any age can sit down and play some Wii bowling. Bring it out at a party, a family gathering, a date. It doesn't matter, it's not that hard to swing a plastic stick around to hit a ball back and forth. I remember there being talk about Wii Sports as an actual form of exercise. In case you haven't read the reports, Wii Sports doesn't really do anything besides get you off the couch sometimes. Even though it was named Wii Sports, it wasn't about getting real exercise, it was about showing off the capability of the Wii's motion control. I think it just so happened that Nintendo made a really fun party game in the process. Another side note, why did
they go so hard on the soundtrack? This stuff is so good, we still hear it all over the internet today. Listen, as a game, Wii Sports isn't much more than it's meant to be. A fun party game that looks good in Wii commercials. It coincidentally also became one of the best-selling video games of all time, and thus one of the best party games ever created. Party games aren't meant to blow your mind. It's Wii Sports. Just sit yourself down and grab a remote. We've been waiting for you to go for the last 2 minutes.
7 out of 10!
Nice spare.
The younger sibling to Wii Sports, Resort has a lot more going on, but hasn't quite built up the reputation of its older counterpart. I still massively enjoy Wii Sports Resort, and find it just a bit better than the original, if for nothing else than just having more stuff to play. Did anyone else spend hours upon hours in the airplane mode? I spent entire evenings flying around the island trying to get all the landmarks, spamming the boost move to get to the Golf Island with enough time to spare. That mode also made me appreciate another thing about Resort, the island. Everything took place on Woohoo Island. It was a nice bit of world building that was completely unnecessary, but neatly tied all of these random minigames together. My other favorite minigame was the sword duels. It was one of the few sports I tried real hard to go pro at. I spent a lot of time in the single player version of that game. I forget what it was called, but it was basically a gauntlet mode against computers. It was the closest thing to a proper adventure mode with a bunch of different levels and boss Miis. All in all, the games in Wii Sports Resort are more involved than its predecessor. Nintendo had a new gadget to show off this time, and it could do more things after all. I really liked most, if not all, the games in here. Golf was never really my thing, but I think that's just me. Resort felt more like a complete package compared to the original Wii Sports. There's more to do all around, but I think the original Wii Sports has that insanely simple draw that even Resort can't replicate. There really isn't a more simple gameplay action than shaking a Wiimote. And as accessibility goes, that's about as far as you can get on the Wii. So even though Resort has more to do, Wii Sports will always have that draw. When comparing the two from a gameplay standpoint though, I find Wii Sports Resort to be a little more engaging. I spent more time on it than the original in its heyday. These minigames just held my attention longer. And they brought over bowling from the last game, which was the only one we really cared about back then.
Nice one.
8 out of 10!